Hey everybody, welcome back. JB here with Tell Me You're Joking, pun intended, the pop politico pod that attempts to bring all the taboo front and center. I've told you before, I think I have a theory that creating taboo subject matter that can't be talked about at the kitchen table or at the soccer game or wherever you might be, I point a finger to that as part of the blame as to why we can't communicate as humans these days. Therefore, the podcast, Tell Me You're Joking. You've been, if you're listening, you're a follower, you know that we tend to lean into the political realm as often as possible. And in 2026, you're probably going to be hearing a lot of these conversations because it's kind of an important year. Big races all over the place, midterms. So in honor of my secret vice, which is not so secret, that being politics in St. Louis politics, Missouri politics, and beyond. Joining me today, candidate for the Democratic seat, Missouri 2, currently held by Ann Wagner. I have Democratic candidate who is going to be running in the primary here in just a couple of short months here, Joan VonDras. Did I say that right?
No, it's Joan VonDras.
Joan
Von.
I was pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Close enough.
That's why the website's votejoan.com.
I like that better. Joining me today is votejoan.com. Also, Missouri 2 resident out there in the wild, wild west of Wildwood. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, JB.
Yeah, it's one of those things that for me, and again, it's no secret for those of you that know me, and if you don't, if you happen to go over on socials, you'll see it. I like to poke the bear being Ann Wagner, because as a resident of her district, and I've been living there since 05, early 06, never met her, never seen her. Now, obviously, she came into office much later than that, but in her whole term, she's been MIA. You've been in the district for quite a while now. Take 2 seconds and talk about just that part of our, quote, representative, end quote, the air quotes, whatever, because she is our representative. Speak to the MIA nature of Ann and her constituents.
Okay, well, JB, I did live in Chesterfield for years, and I taught in Parkway in Clayton, moved down to Richmond Heights, but I moved back 2 years ago to Wildwood. Was retired, wanted to ride my motorcycle off the roads.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And in January, when Donald Trump won the election, and people hadn't heard from Ann Wagner, I wanted her to do a town hall. And I kept contacting her office, and I actually went to her office and spoke to her secretary, and I said, I will help her do a town hall, my town hall style, which is my facilitative energy that I get people talking and having conversation. I never heard back from her, and I didn't think I would. No one hears back from Ann. I had someone tell me the other day, well, she returns phone calls. I'm like, no, actually, she doesn't. And if she did return phone calls, you wouldn't have had 20,000 people at No Kings in South County and West County and around the region protesting. You wouldn't have people outside her office every Saturday protesting. Her silence is her complicity in all of this. So it's not that she's just not talking to her constituents. She isn't saying anything about the matters of the day that concern the constituents themselves. And she's silent.
So I completely agree. I see the same thing you see. I also understand why. And I'm not giving her a pass, but I mean, you don't need to be a fool that if you do follow Representative Wagner on any socials, it's like clockwork. You're going to get the Sunday scripture quote, and then you're going to get 2 or 3 White House talking points, memos thrown out during the week. And, you know, in the world of content, the term ratioed is pretty easy to understand, and it's every single time. And the theory is, why is she not coming out? Well, because she'll get ratioed, right? Also, to win the plurality in the district, especially with the redistricting, et cetera, is not that hard anymore for her in particular. So given that, like, what if you were to win the seat, out of the gate, from an accessibility standpoint, what does that look like, or what would that look like under a Vote Joan administration?
Right now, I am running as I would as a representative. So, for example, since January, even before I was running, I wanted to deal with the contempt and the division in my community. And I'm future-focused and I'm solution-oriented. That's just who I am. It's my entire career in Parkway and Clayton as well. So I started doing these workshops called Town Talks Live. And in those, it was about how we bridge the divide, how we have those conversations about difficult issues. And I would take people through the steps to do that and actually help them plan how to have those conversations. And what I discovered in January and until now when I have entered this race is that we aren't that divided. And people really want to talk about issues. There is an impression that is given to us through a lot of the vitriol on social media that we're seriously divided in this district. But when I sit down and I have conversations with people that are Republicans or that are independents, we find we have a lot in common. And I just had a conversation like that yesterday. So I would continue the workshops, but what those have morphed into are policy matter talks. I think town halls tend to fail us. Well, first of all, I never has any of them, but a lot of them end up just shouting matches back and forth, and nobody really listens, or we show up at the town hall, and then everybody leaves, no one knows one another. Right. One of the first things I do at my workshops, which would be some of my policy talks, is we sit down and we have a conversation with somebody next to us, and we get to know one another. And what the beginning policy talks are going to be are about the policies that impact the people in District 2. I want to hear their stories. And then from there, we'll plan a series of policy talks. So that's one thing I have going on. The other thing, coffee and conversations. Like I've got that, for example, in Franklin County with Amy Thompson, the first Saturday of every month at Little Ireland. I just want people to come in and I want to hear their stories. I want to get to know them. I did a pizza and politics thing that I'm repeating, and that's getting diverse young people together who have diverse ideas and having conversations.
Well, I tell you what, if you have pints and pet peeves, I'm in. Name the tavern. That'll go over well. So let me ask a question regarding accessibility. Because the U.S. representatives are really, I find that position moving forward in today's environment really unique to what it has been historically. And this is really a Trump effect. Historically, and you pointed it out, like a representative is looking at policies or things that will help improve their district and work at home. But in today's environment, the conversations, the narratives are really driven from MAGA. So what they believe are the most important things, whether it's immigration or whether it's pick your poison, right? They make it this universal policy that is just to be applied to America, and yet we don't really hear or see kind of a differentiation in narratives or messaging as it pertains to Missouri 2 needs a lot of different things than Florida 5, right? How would you kind of address that balance between understanding that the House of Representatives today are supposed to be a backstop to protect power and to pass policy from a national perspective, but you also have to help the people in Missouri too. How do you view your connectivity between the two, and what would you start with? Like if you had one thing.
Wow, a lot of great questions. And I want to go back to what you said first about the role of a representative. I am not celebrity representative, and I feel like that is what the emphasis is on. Mm-hmm. It's about the rage bait, how popular can I be on social media, rather than what are the conversations that we're going to have with our constituents. And even within District 2, what's going on in Franklin County right now with the data centers, other people they have things that they want to focus on there, or St. Clair with the landfill issue, right? Even in District 2, we have different topics that people want to discuss. And that's why my policy matters are all over the district, and my town talks were as well, and the coffee and conversations, because I want to know what their stories are and their concerns are. We get overwhelmed by the national narrative. Absolutely. So that, in my opinion, and even just from a historical perspective, representatives initially were not to be this career. The idea and the founders was that you have somebody go for a couple years, represent their representatives, maybe a couple terms, go back to the community, they own their business, they're connected to it. We've lost that. These are professional politicians.
Professional fundraisers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something else we have to get a hold on. I mean, you think about everything we're up against right now. We're up against Citizens United.
Well, let me ask you this real quick, because you're talking about the representation and trying to avoid kind of being bundled up in D.C. as a rep. How would you describe your potential strategy when it comes to caucusing and what that means as far as your identity?
Oh, I'm very excited about that, because I am about bridging the divide, and I focus on solutions and common ground, right? And representing what the people want. But I want to be on the Problem Solvers Caucus. And that is where a caucus that has one Republican and one Democrat on it, and they agree to work on issues that they can find common ground, but at the same time not sabotage one another on issues where they disagree. And that is what we really need to build and focus on, because Congress is broken. And this is, in my opinion, in Congress, this group, if it could be strengthened, has so much potential. They were the ones that did the infrastructure bill.
Right. So, okay, so we're going to be all over the board today. I sense it, and that's fine. If you're listening, don't worry. It's going to remain exciting, because we're gonna go back and forth here. But let's put a pin in the map, as I stated before we came on. For our listeners, I'd like to kind of get an idea of where's Joan from. Family, kids, a little career. Give us that elevator speech as far as bringing us up to the spring of 2026.
Well, I'm like the character in my favorite movie, George, and It's a Wonderful Life. I have been here my whole life. From growing up in Florissant, where my father opened 7 different schools and my mother was a school teacher, to all the 30 years that I have taught in Parkway and Clayton, and also local universities. Mm-hmm. And much of my work was about change. I wrote over $250,000 of grants in Parkway and did staff development, because I care about solving problems and change. And that's who I have been my whole life here. So what I came to realize is this is a natural progression for me, because I'm a problem solver. And I also taught the founding documents in American history. So all of that has brought me to this point now, with incredible support from my husband. We went to something in Chesterfield and heard another candidate. And when we left, he said, "Joan, you've got to run, or we will not win District 2. And that's when I finally stepped in. I'd had other people, important people in the area, ask me to run, but I just wanted to see how it turned out. And then the other piece was my children. They are completely supportive of this campaign, and I'm in this campaign for their future too. I have 2 sons, mm-hmm. and their daughter-in-laws live here, and I have 2 beautiful granddaughters, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I care about their future. And I really feel that right now this is a watershed moment.
Yeah.
We either save democracy at midterms, or we lose it. And that is how passionate my whole family is with this as well.
So you don't need to name names, whoever the other candidate was that kind of spurred that, but can you maybe expand upon what the motivation was, the aha moment at which you decided, I want to run, I can run, and here's how I'm going to run? What did that look like?
But the aha moment was that evening, because at first I was like, well, I'm not a politician and other people are politicians. But then I realized that I know this town. And this town, we're not going to win District 2 with the same thing, doing the same thing over and over again with conventional politics. We keep losing that way. Mm-hmm. What I know about this town is that people want to have connectivity and they care about their neighbor. And the only way we're going to push back on all the outrage is through conversation and building community. And that is my skill set. And the other piece is I enjoy having conversations with people across the political divide. That's my whole piece. When I did staff development, you had to get people to share their vision and their goals, and then you needed to unite them and find common ground to move things forward. That is what democracy is. We need to not label each other as monoliths. Oh, you're a Republican, so you're like this, or you're a Democrat, you're like this. That's what I faced yesterday in a really great conversation in Franklin County, and had to just widen someone's narrative on what those labels are.
So you guys were talking about it a little bit earlier. You were labeled are you a demon Democrat, I believe was the term.
She really liked the conversation that we were having, and then she asked me that. And, I talked to her about labels and how dangerous they are. For example, we were talking about beekeeping. And she says, oh, you know about bees and how important the bees are? This is at the Franklin County Data Center
Yeah.
thing. I said, yes, actually, I had bees when I lived in Richmond Heights. So I do. And, that's not a conservative or what is that, a conservative or a liberal issue? Because that's
Yeah.
what she kept trying to put it in a box. It's like, no.
Do you
And then
drink-
we're both here for the
Yeah.
data center.
Do you drink water? Is it clean water? Oh my God, are you a lib? Right.
And the data center, I said, we're both here because we care about the transparency in Beltline's presentation about this data center. Is that a conservative of a liberal point? No, it isn't. So we've got to get away from that. And once we can pull out the labels and the contempt, and I do a lot of work on my Bridging the Divide workshop in that, we get to another place. I've actually had a church in Baldwin ask me to do a workshop in March on Bridging the Divide because they want to have conversations in their church. They don't like the division they're seeing.
So let's talk about the division because the way I personally view it, I think that the paradigm has shifted. I don't think that it is a left-right paradigm anymore. I think the division is a north-south one of haves and have-nots. And I think the Republicans, frankly, have done a much better job over the past 10 years, not in executing policies that fix it, but to understand what populism or populist policies sound like.
What they're really good at are getting people distracted with bright, shiny objects that enrage and divide. But people really just care about their lives when it comes down to it, the affordability of their health care right now, the increases in taxation, what the price of food. They really care about those things. But social media has us so enraged and looking at the shiny objects and keeping us away from the conversation, but that is intentional. The division is intentional.
So you're saying beef prices aren't Hunter Biden's fault? Because that's what I just read. Am I close? No? Right? I mean, it's but that is, I say that, and I'm sure now that, Big Brother heard me say it next to my laptop, it's probably going to pop up in my newsfeed. So let me ask you a question then. When you do go to market, when you go to these new communities and you go to meet people, and in this particular district, every block further west is an increased propensity or chance that you're going to have more, stated Republicans.
Yes.
It just is what it is. So when you walk out that way and you introduce yourself and you say, "Hi, I am blank. I am running for blank, and I am a D."
No, that isn't how I approach people.
How do you, but the question is always, you're a Democrat, well, what do you stand for? That's my question. How do you define yourself through a Democratic lens, a Democrat lens, in this particular market?
I would say that, first of all, I listen to people's stories before I really just said, this is who I am and this is what I think. Because what I understand as a teacher of all these years is it isn't my story that matters, it's your story and how policy impacts you, your neighbors, and the people around you. So I really start with that and find common ground because we really do have a lot of things that we are genuinely both concerned about. And that's a good way to start. And regarding the actual policies, is people really vote. They really like a lot of the Democratic policies, but they don't understand that that's maybe what they're really interested in. Not everybody. I mean, there are some that just really are buying into the narrative that we need to destroy the social contract and not help anybody out in the community. But when you have conversations with people and you share stories of people that have concerns or know someone, it brings them into the conversation and it allows you to widen their perspective, and also my own too.
So the name of the game is getting votes, though. So my question to you is in regards to, as you listen to these stories and you hear these people that are self-proclaimed either registered Republicans or vote Republican or anti-Democrat, because I know for a fact they are saying these words. What is the strategy to create a conversion? How do you stay out of the weeds of, the big tent policies that the Democratic Party rolls out in which there's a million different priorities when these individuals are really only looking at one, maybe two at most, three if they're crazy?
But you know what they tend to care about? They tend to care about the Constitution, and they're seeing how institutions are being compromised because these are impacting their own lives. So if you talk about the Constitution and you talk about democracy, it is really, and if you're passionate and inspirational when you have these conversations, it really does people start to realize that this is country above party.
But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the polling and you frankly listen to the narrative, as much as that is true, they are still not taking the next step to point blame at those that are risking or putting at risk the Constitution and constitutional principles. Why do you think that is? Why is it so hard for Republican voters or supporters to take that leap of faith and actually say, that's not right?
I'm not finding that. I actually have as many Republicans on my advisory team and supporting me in this as I do Democrats and independents. Because once you open up the conversation and you start talking about history and you listen to their stories as well, I don't know. I've not had a contentious conversation with anybody yet. And I'm sure I'll have one. Yesterday could have been one, but I did a good job of bridging that conversation with her. And at the end of it, like, oh, okay, I am going to come to one of your workshops.
So for all intent and purposes, it was really kind of a private event. These are conversations that you're having in person. There's not a television crew there. It's not being live streamed. So my follow-up question is, where are these voices publicly? I personally, I've got my own little text group chats of a mix of individuals, and I'm seeing and hearing legitimate cracks in the armor as far as their MAGA loyalty, but none of them are willing to go public with it. What is your experience in that? Because without them saying this is wrong, we are still looking at a heavyweight bout that should not be. It should be a no-brainer, but it's not going to be. Billions of dollars are going to be spent on these campaigns.
Oh, definitely.
And yet all it would take is a little bit of, you know what, this is wrong, and we could all move on. Why do you think that's not happening?
I think it is happening for some people, but not everyone. But eventually, as more and more people do step up and have conversations, because one of the things, seriously, I have concentric circles, and I have in those circles in the workshop how you talk to people all the way out to the people that have misinformation, and how you carefully craft those conversations. And as you start getting people talking to their other friends, maybe you talk to 5 more people, or these meet the candidates that I have in people's homes. And I love having the meet the candidates. I've got Republicans giving me meet the candidates as well as Democrats. So I have that conversation in the home, and okay, well, you have 5. Well, if 5 people from that meet the candidate will talk to 5 other people, and they'll have meet the candidates. I agree with you. How do we jump over the outrage and the people feeling that they can't speak up because they will be alienated from the community and their friends? Mm-hmm. They need to know that there is community out there and that it is okay to have a differing opinion, and that you don't have to be loyal to the talking points that are being poured down on you like a bucket of water.
So let's dig into your policy, your stated policy goals, your focus from your website, which is vondrasforcongress.us, and I'll have all these linked in show notes if you're curious, or just speak it into your Google. Hey Siri, she'll figure it out. Number 1 on your list is build economic opportunity for all. This one is really kind of obvious for me, and I think I just kind of alluded to the difference or the shift from left and right ideology to a north-south have-nots. When you talk about economic opportunity for all, that really is kind of the underlying issue that is occurring in all 50 states. Missouri, too, is a really unique, I think, is a microcosm of this exact issue. Chesterfield, Wildwood, anywhere in the valley, right? Parts of, Kirkwood, Webster, et cetera, Ladue, Huntley, on and on and on. What we're talking about is the 1% of the nation. These are areas that have individuals that are at a minimum in the top 5% from a income standpoint, from a wealth standpoint, from a real estate standpoint. And then within this district also, we have a vast number of individuals, both blue and red, right, in their own little areas, that are at the far end of the spectrum.
Right.
So from a policy perspective, when you say build economic opportunity for all, how do you navigate that reality of power players within your district that are significantly benefiting from a lot of these economic policies because it is squeezing more money to the top?
Right.
We all know it. This is not trickle down. It's funnel up. connect your policy position to the economic reality of these families in Missouri too.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of it goes down to our educational system and building economic opportunity through that. I think one of the reasons that we have people that aren't moving up is because our educational system is under attack. So I think that's one thing we have to do is we have to support our public education system, and we can talk about that more later because it is one of the policy pieces.
It's number two. We'll get to it in just a second.
Yeah. So that's a part of it.
You can blend the two if you want to talk about
it is for me because you think about, let's take Maplewood, Richmond Heights.
Mm-hmm.
Linda Henke, who was the assistant superintendent in Clayton when I was there, became the superintendent in Maplewood, Richmond Heights.
Right.
She transformed those schools, and by transforming those schools, it brought more economic opportunity and more small businesses into Maplewood. So when we have strong schools, it makes a difference. Rockwood did not approve that tax increase for the schools. That's going to hurt real estate values,
Yep.
and it is going to impact the economy. The other thing is, I want to be on, which I'll talk about that later, but the Agriculture Committee. We've got a huge agriculture community in St. Louis. I mean, not only you've got the Danforth Plant Science Center, you've got Bungie, you've got Bear, you've got small farms, 2,500 just in Franklin County alone, little diverse farms,
Right.
and then about 20,000 statewide. And you've got 43% of the nation's produce coming through St. Louis. So we're underutilizing that economic opportunity. Ann's on the financial committee, and it's important. We have a lot of important financial firms in St. Louis. However,
Those are donors.
agriculture
Yep.
matters, and the SNAP benefits are under the Agriculture Committee. So I think all of those things that I mentioned, they all tie in to building economic opportunity.
So let's talk about education for a second, though. Obviously, the Department of Education is clearly in chaos with a WWE or WWF.
Yeah, intentional chaos.
Commander in chief, and the inconvenient truth for the right when it comes to the Department of Education and blaming all these test scores is the reality is each state is responsible for their curriculums. The Department of Education is primarily there for making sure there's equal access, making sure that kids are safe, and creating best practices. But at the end of the day, it's the call of the state to manage their curriculums, correct? So my question to you is, in Missouri, where we are 49th in teacher pay?
Yes.
We have now 40% of school districts, I believe, is the number that are actively on 4-day weeks.
Yeah, in rural areas, yes, mainly.
We have the voucher system that has been implemented recently that has proven that over 92% of all the people that are using the vouchers had kids already in said private schools. We're not seeing this choice movement that they sold. We all know.
I don't think they're revealing who's getting those vouchers either, right?
100%.
Because people cut in line.
Well, and the funny thing is I have kids, that are in the system, and I have friends that have kids all over private schools. Guess what happened to the tuition at all the private schools, right? Trend. They went up too. So there's no value add, right?
Right.
So my question is, so much of education is a state level issue, right? Jeff City has far more power over school districts in the state of Missouri than DC does.
Right.
So how would you, as a federal representative, connect those dots? Because we talk about, the problem-solving coalition, right? Mm-hmm. The committee. What would that look like between you and Keough's office?
Yeah. So I know that it's a state issue and managed by the state, but I want to go back to the founding of the country, where people said, well, how can you have people vote for their leaders when we have an uneducated electorate? And Jefferson was of the mind that, that's why we need a public school system. Mm-hmm. So for me, the public school system is foundational to everything throughout the country and in every state. And if you want to destroy democracy, what you go after is the public school system. And our tax dollars should be put to use for the public school system. If people choose not to participate in that, there are other options for that. But right now, we're underfunding public education by $300 million.
Do you think this is a nefarious attempt to undermine democracy, or do you think it's more of a retribution in regards to the notion that Democrats are more college educated, they have higher educations, blah blah blah. We've all seen the statistics, or is it both in your world? Because it doesn't make sense to me without any statistical proof. There's no metrics that they can provide or have attempted to provide that prove deregulation helps educational systems. Is it intentional to undermine democracy, or is it just something to screw Democrats?
I don't think it's something to screw Democrats. I think it is. There are some. Well, look at the factors that are imploding our democracy. Let's look at the Heritage Foundation
Which
and
one?
Project 2025. Right? You've got that
Citizens
one,
United.
right? Which they intentionally do want to have a nationalist state. All right, and then you've got the Peter Thiel pay mafia, right? Who want a unitary executive, so they want to undermine democracy. And then you've got Citizens United, which is trying to tear away at our representative democracy. And if you can sabotage the public schools, which should be, teaching civics and history in a larger context that isn't curated by different views, religious views, and things like that. So you've got that going on as well. And then you've got the tech bros, right, who are putting all of this money into their social media platforms to make them profitable and pull out the rage bait. So I think public education gives us media literacy, right? It teaches, at least when I taught it, and we were able to teach it from a multicultural perspective, which is really important. Mm-hmm. We engage kids in Kids Vote and in civics, integrated the curriculum, and we've got to protect those public school systems.
So let me be devil's advocate for a second here. Then explain to me test scores. Why are we seeing kind of a degradation in STEM, in reading and writing, reading comprehension in particular? Most kids can't write, to save their lives. There is a measurable reality.
We are underfunding our public institutions and our public education classrooms. We are overloading them, these classes of 25 kids. If we really, really care about education, we need to fund it and not take money to cover some of the other pieces in the state that they need money for. They always come to education for it, right? And we need to put money into it. If we really care about young people and we care about our children, the foundational thing is their education. And start with pre-K.
What is the parents' role in this process when it comes to executing the education itself? Because obviously the kids are in school, 8 to 3 or whatever.
Right.
But then there's homework, there's evenings, there's bedtime, all this other stuff. What do you have an opinion as to whether or not we're seeing a significant degradation of responsibility from parents, compared to what we grew up with? Because I know how my childhood was. It was non-negotiable. It was homework, table, and there was engagement from my parents, and they were learning at the same time. It doesn't feel like that's the reality today. Do you see that the same way? What is the role that the parents should be taking in spite of what the government is doing?
I think that parents have the best intentions with supporting their kids in school and their education, but you come home at the end of the day, and a lot of these families are maybe working a side gig just to keep up with the affordability issue. And there's so many distractions, even with with the cell phones and the television and everything else. Mm-hmm. So I think it presents a unique challenge for parents, but I think that most parents will do what they can to provide that opportunity. But I always felt as a teacher that it was my job to do the teaching. And if I had a homework assignment or something, or a child needed to finish something, I really wanted it to be an opportunity for parents to engage in a conversation with them about the topics. So the bulk of the learning needs to be in the school day.
Yeah, I kind of teed that up, and you hit it out of the park, because the reality is parents are struggling. When we were younger, there was the potential of a single income household, usually 1.5. Now we're definitively at 2 income households, and sometimes it's 2.5 to 3 because there's side gigs,
right,
to help pay the bills. And when parents are done with all of that, you don't have the time, or you're burnt, right? And again, that's that north-south divide of haves and have-nots. which is accelerating. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break because when we come back, I want to lean more into this economic opportunity, talk specifically about the region. Data centers is a hot topic, jobs, housing, some of the core, pillars of an economy of a district. So here's what we're going to do. We take a quick break. When we come back, more of Joan's platform, and we'll keep it going. See ya. Be right back. Okay, we're back. I told you it'd be a quick break, and due to the magic of post-production, it was quicker than you thought it would be. Sitting here with Missouri 2 Democratic candidate. Primary. When is the primary? What is the date? Do you know?
August 4th.
August 4th? Okay, August 4th. Wow, I didn't think it was that late. I thought it was much earlier. That's quite a runway.
It is. Yeah. It only gives us, 3 months till the general.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's crazy. That's a fast turnaround.
Right.
Joan VonDras. Our website is vondrasforcongress.us.
Or votejoan.com. It's easier.
Votejoan.com. I like that one better. We were talking about your policy page. We just spent some time talking about the role of education and kind of the greater impact that it has. Because one thing I was thinking about when I think of education, specifically in Missouri, and the connectivity that education has with the economy, jobs, I'm now forced, and I'm sure you probably went through this with your own kids. I have a 20-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old. My 20-year-old is already gone. He's in Nashville. He's down, doing his thing. He knows what career he wants. He's never coming back. Not because he doesn't like St. Louis, not because he doesn't like the region, but because it doesn't have opportunity for him. My 17-year-old is already eyeing up something in probably the ACC World Coastal range, and I don't see him coming back based on his limited amount of interest or options, so to speak. 12-year-old, who knows? But when you talk about education here and how we've devalued it, in spite of the fact that we do have, from a higher education standpoint, WashU, SLU, tremendous institutions, right, that are a draw.
They are a draw, but they're under fire right now.
They're under fire, and the talent that they are developing is an export, right? So, and that comes down to opportunity, right? Industry, innovation, jobs, right? If they're not here, those individuals have less incentive to stay here, regardless of what they think of ProVal. So my question to you is, getting back to your policy page, and we kind of flipped them a little bit. We leaned into education, but build economic opportunity for all. Keys to the car, what would you do? What would that look like for the region to activate more opportunity?
Oh, I think we need to restore some of the grants and opportunities that were coming to the area that's been removed by the Trump administration, and and some of the defunding of our universities. One of the things that makes St. Louis strong are our research institutions and our big businesses that do research, like the Danforth Plant Foundation and such. So we need to make sure that those structures are strengthened, because they do draw innovation and they do draw startups. Look at the Cortex in the city and all the startups that became a part of that. Look at what's going on in Chesterfield with the development. They're doing a multi-use type of development. They want to bring in more small businesses, right? Instead of the sprawl, what do we have? The longest strip mall in the country in Chesterfield Valley. And it's really
2 of them.
and it's really great that, instead they're looking at it in a different way. So, and, think about the rural areas too.
When you think of jobs, though, when you think of opportunity, what do you envision? Because historically, the St. Louis region, and I'm a Granite City kid, right? So I grew up in Madison County. I know what our brand was. It was steel, it was aluminum, it was heavy industry. St. Louis, there was a little bit more of a question mark, even as I was growing up. Yes, there was AB. Yes, we knew Peabody. We knew the financial firms were here. But now, really kind of nerding out on this, I don't know what our identity is when it comes to kind of like an industrial or an employment brand identity. What do you think it is? What do you think it could be? And what would you maybe focus on if there was a singular silo that you think we could benefit the most from?
I think small businesses are the key. My husband started a small business, an architecture firm, 20 years ago. And, he employs over a dozen people, does work all over the country because he was able to use a Pell Grant and student loans and such to get through college. Mm-hmm. And we were also able to, get houses and flip them and build equity so he could start his own company. So we have to give economic opportunity for people to start those businesses.
Okay.
And we need to help them build wealth through housing, for example, or build wealth through having small business grants and things like that. Small businesses are the economic engine of the country and district too. We have a lot of small businesses. And we have a lot of big businesses too. We've got Centene here, we've got Purina.
So let's play a little debate prep here. I'm going to play devil's advocate in terms of small businesses and the barrier to entry, because I too am a small business owner. Some real estates, other forward-facing businesses, food and beverage, and obviously what I do now. Barrier to entry is a lot of times regulations, right? Red tape, too much, too many rules, too many hoops to jump through. And the Republicans, this is a national mantra. Like when they talk about GDP and they talk about growth, one of the things they talk about, the first thing they talk about is obviously, we're going to cut taxes. Second thing, which is 1B, is always we're going to cut regulations. We're going to deregulate more so people in business can just do their thing. The left's position when it comes to that is, whoa, hold on, we need to do this safely. But they've kind of botched it over time. They've made it too hard to do certain basic things.
Yeah. Did you read Abundance by Ezra Klein?
Twice.
I used that for my book talks. So when I was doing town talks, so I did Abundance. And, I agree with what Klein has said, is that what we do is we layer on regulations and we don't take any of those regulations off.
Right.
And it is a deterrent.
Well, for example, in the book, and for the listener, if you're not familiar, unbelievable book. It's called Abundance. It's Ezra Klein and Thompson. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his first name. Anyway, but basically they were pointing out that the Democratic Party was, because they were, and I'm paraphrasing, because they were too tree huggery, they made it impossible to build houses for people to afford, right? California is what they were referencing. So my question to you is here, when you think of opportunity and deregulation through the lens of helping small businesses, specifically, what are we looking at? How do we help them outside of grants and subsidies? Because that then triggers, that's socialism, right? Even though it's really kind of investment. Mm-hmm. How do you navigate that nuance?
I think it's really important in District 2 that it's a community-based discussion. Like, take this database thing that was happening at the data center that's happening, two of them in Franklin County. And the pitch yesterday was, it's a pretty good pitch if you're just taking it on the surface level, right? But at the end of the day, it was only going to get like 50 jobs per building that goes in. And there was no guarantee that those jobs were going to be outsourced to people in other states, right? Just because you're creating a job doesn't mean that it's a job in Pacific, right? So, and the data center, it's it can bring economic opportunity, but really, is it going to bring enough economic opportunity to offset the damage it's going to do to real estate values? So it's a really complex thing, and I think the exciting thing about yesterday for me was all the people that turned out to share an opinion and push back and question, and that they're going to have 2 more hearings with this data center to decide, is it really of value to the community, or is it going to damage the Pacific community? Do
you think there's a risk, though, with data center narratives in general, that we're really missing the forest for the trees here, in so much that, because I think about this a lot. I know that there are a couple data centers that are potentially going up on the east side. Obviously, almost every community is talking about them. And I think in terms of technology historically, where at first, and I literally just wrote a Substack yesterday joking about how, the original anti-data center people were farriers whenever the Model T came rolling down the street, right? We're going to lose our jobs. It's going to be bad for us. We no more horses, which was to a degree true, but obviously.
And he talks about that in abundance.
Yeah.
How we push back against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my thing is here, Missouri especially, again, this is where the relationship between federal representatives like, the seat that you're going after and our senators and state leadership, you got to play nice, because if the state does pass no more state income tax, there is going to need to be new revenue sources. Otherwise, everybody's just going to be sales taxed to death, because that's the only way they can pay for it. So when you think of potential industry, yes, we know what ag is. We've seen it. It's a slow grow because it's not kicking out massive numbers to our population. Boeing has its new plant, new deals, but we're not really seeing needle-changing numbers to help fund schools. Data centers are a little different, potentially different, because until we have some draw where outsiders will pay for our revenue, we need it to be derived from the inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But, I think about the taxation piece, right? And I think that the oligarchy and some of those groups that I mentioned to you, they've done a great job demonizing taxation so they can get out of paying taxes, that 1%, right? And it's put the burden on regular people like us. So we do feel that the taxes are too high because we're having to take that in. Mm-hmm. And what Kehoe's proposing is just an unfair tax, a sales tax. That's just an unfair tax for people of lower income.
Well, I think I saw the number in Missouri, the effect to have an effective tax rate, which is what you're actually paying, of 0. Your total income goes all the way up to like the low 40s as a single and 60, 65 for a household, right? That's a lot of people in this state that are in that realm.
Yes.
And what's going to happen to them is gas tax is going to triple.
Right.
Food taxes are going to at least double, any type of housing, et cetera. Because if you're a renter, property taxes are going to go up and the landlord is going to increase your rent. All of these things are going to go up.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
So how do you approach that?
I mean, he's going to bankrupt the state.
Yes.
Well, the other thing that I've done since January, every workshop that I've had somebody running for state office do the workshop with me, because a rising tide lifts all boats, right? For instance, Meredith Sumonick in South County, or Amy Thompson in Franklin County, Tori in Olivet. So just, I think to have a good relationship between federal and state is really important. We're a team. Yeah. Right? And we need to have good relationships with one another, and we need to put our best policy forward at the federal level and the state level.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the other policies that are on your page that you highlight. The third one down, which is front and center for, every single American, unless you're a government employee, access to affordable quality health care. Mm-hmm. Missouri's in trouble. Missouri has a lot of individuals that are on the ACA and or zero, nothing. And we're seeing this railroad car of chaos coming down the track that is blowing it up even more.
Right.
So take a second and talk about healthcare just from a 10,000-foot standpoint, what you see kind of ideologically, and then how would you, how do you take that viewpoint and apply it to your candidacy?
One of the things I'm excited about with the policy matters is we are going to have a panel on healthcare. And Ed Weisbart, who is in state, you know Ed?
Oh, I love Ed.
Yeah.
Huge Beatle fan.
Yeah, so he's going to be on the panel. I met with him to talk about the physicians for a national health care plan, and I really like that. Plus, there's Blake Ashby, who lives in Ferguson, and he has bubble economics, and he also has an interesting perspective on that as well. So one of the policy talks will be where we invite people in to share their stories and ask their questions to the panelist, because we don't have to adopt a health care plan from somewhere else. We're innovative. Let's hear the best ideas, and let's put together the best universal health care plan that we can. other countries, I went to the World Happiness Summit in Miami because I was using Arthur Brooks' book, long story short, Love Your Enemies, in my workshop.
Sure.
And a friend said, oh, he started that, Joan, why don't you go? So I went to it, planned my workshops with him. And when you look at the happiness of other countries, we are so low because we're not taking care of ourselves at that basic Maslow's hierarchy.
Yep.
Right? And the only way we're going to start to fix that is to fix our healthcare system and have healthy people in this community. And there is no reason the wealthiest country in the world cannot do that. It's pure sabotage by, the middlemen that just want to take the money out.
So take a second and address kind of, again, another one of the calling cards of the Republican Party, Republican narrative, really, I should say, when it comes to the old Reagan quote, one of the scariest things you can hear is, hi, I'm the government, I'm here to help you, right? And they've bastardized that to the point where they correlate systemic failure to government simplistically, as opposed to looking at governmental actions or governmental scope that is just inefficient in executing said services. So when you talk about universal health care, when you talk about, expanding education, getting back to some form of Department of Education that is actually helping everybody, like how do you address the potential fears of big government and failed government historically in these areas?
Well, I would hope that, first of all, when people pay their fair share, especially the oligarchs and the 1%, that we'll have that money back.
Right.
And we do need to make sure it is being spent well and we don't have waste. And I don't know a lot about AI, but I am hoping that AI could be used for good. Actually, the World Happiness Summit in Italy, their whole topic this year was about AI for good. How can we use AI for good? Mm-hmm. And hopefully managing some of the waste of money and the fraud, which occurs with the very, very wealthy. Look at all the pardons Trump has done, right?
Sure.
Right, at all levels. But I think that we need to give more local control to those things. Yes, we need a big government idea for healthcare. We absolutely need that. So people in one state don't have a lesser healthcare program than people in another state, right? So all of that needs to be looked at. And I think people forget the founders. It's life. I'm running as a constitutional Democrat because I think we kind of forget the basis of the Constitution, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Adams said, the end of government is the happiness of the people, right? That is the end of government. And we need to look at what are those things that make people happy. And it's that Maslow's hierarchy. It is shelter, it is food, it is health care.
Yeah, ask the French monarchy how that goes when you don't pay attention to that, right?
The meat cake.
The proletariat arises.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of skim through these here. You also have ensure safe and fair food supply for everyone, strengthen our representative democracy. Representatives must be accessible. We kind of alluded to that earlier, talking about your sessions and getting out, doing the opposite of what Ann has done. Breakthrough partisan gridlock. That one intrigues me. Like when you think of partisan gridlock, define that. Like what is that to you, and why is that important to a potential constituent?
Well, I think it goes back to the Problem Solvers Caucus, right? I mean, everybody is so, not everybody. I mean, there are people there that are really trying to bridge the divide, but nobody wants to let the other side have a win, right? Mm-hmm. And you just get gridlock. So, I mean, look at even the thing with Ann Wagner and Josh Hawley I was talking to you about earlier today with Eureka, where Ann deliberately tried to sabotage Josh Hawley and Cori Bush when they were working on the Radiation Exposure and Compensation Act, which many people in District 2, including myself, can apply for. So, and people just don't want other people to have a win. And we're not playing for the same team if it's like that. We need to play for the same team. Have people, we need to value people who can have wins together. And you think about the immigration bill, right, that Langford, got going, and Trump wanted to sabotage it so he could fix this. Well, really, it was to do this, what he's doing now. that was a win. And we need to show up as constituents and just really support the people that are trying to have a win.
Would you agree that's a problem, though, for Democrats as well? Because the other side of that coin, when it comes to Langford and the immigration policy, that the legislation that he wrote, bipartisan, that would have addressed loads and loads of issues with our immigration system. On the other side of that coin, there was the reality of the open border. Democrats, they can't, like we were talking earlier about the individuals that you meet that aren't willing to publicly say this is constitutionally bad. Democrats also are having a real hard time saying, yeah, the border was bad. And now it's closed for all intent and purposes. We do not have a perfect structure. We all know that. We don't have reform. We have these issues that are occurring in northern cities, right, along the lines of this fallout. But there needs to be some acknowledgement that we do have, for all intent and purposes, a closed border. Would you agree with that? And do Democrats have to kind of practice what they preach when we do see, and there's not many, there's not a lot, but when we do see things occurring that are good?
I think that this immigration bill would have given us an opportunity to build stronger borders and hire more judges, and we've lost that. I don't know. We're going to have to do a lot of work to get that back and get that stabilized. And the one thing I find with people when I have the conversations, especially Republicans and independents too, you can want a secure border, but also have a humane program and humanity in the program. And I think that right now, that is what really is pulling a lot of people to question the policies of the Trump administration, because they're seeing the harm that it's causing in their communities. And they're seeing the inhumanity of, like, the 5-year-old or the murder, the 2 murders, and it really is shaking people up, because this isn't what people voted for.
Right. I want to read something to you because it's funny. In real time, I'm hearing you respond to this, and I'm thinking to one of my friends, great friend. He's definitively a Trump supporter. But I got this text from him last night in regards to this whole immigration debate. We go back and forth every single day, 20 times a day. Talk about problem-solving caucus, right? His quote, how about this? Any illegal that has been here more than 5 years can self-report within 7 days, no repercussions. They get to stay until they have an immigration hearing and due process. If they are found worthy to stay, they stay. If they are deported, they get to get back in line without penalty, but behind the ones that are in the system currently trying to come in the legal way. Period.
They don't have enough people to do that program, right? We were going to hire 40,000 judges, and what do we have?
So here, the moral of the story, though, that I extrapolated from that text is this isn't working, right?
Right.
And that's where I'm going with this. This is where, like, or Democrats in particular, at some point, I think it would behoove all of us to say, border was bad. 12 million, 14 million, whatever the number was. That's insane. That's too many. We can admit that was a problem. Just like we expect Republicans and normal people to say, Biden won 2020 and J6 was an insurrection, right?
Correct.
Our eyes don't fool us. But Democrats have to be willing to allow their eyes not to fool them when it comes to things like that. Would you agree? And how would you respond to somebody addressing the border now being closed?
You mean what your friend said, or because
kind of all of it in totality? Like, would you agree that the Biden administration and carried forward with Harris into the election, was it a mistake? Not addressing and acknowledging the border was as porous as it was.
Well, I feel that they did acknowledge that it was as porous as it was, which is why they wanted to get the immigration bill passed so badly.
So you wouldn't say that they had a role in allowing the 12, 14 million, whatever the number was?
Well, they had a role in it, but at least they saw that it needed to be fixed. And that's what the bill was for, was to fix it. And we couldn't even get off ground zero because we couldn't get that passed. And it hasn't been, nothing like that has been passed in over 20 years. That was a real opportunity.
Yeah, well, no, I don't disagree. I think at the end of the day, until Congress does its job
Right.
and actually writes legislation to address this, none of it will really matter. A couple other things that you talked about here too, also strengthen our representative democracy. That sounds to me like a history teacher statement. Can you assume I have no idea what those words mean? What does that mean to me as a potential?
Well, this is
constituent?
government of the people, for the people, and by the people. It is a representative democracy, right? But we've got Citizens United. They're not, people, corporations. And if they want to be, then they should have the same tax codes and things that we do, which Blake Ashby has some really good ideas in his Bubble Up Economics about that. But we are putting so much money that in politics, the politicians are spending all their time trying to fundraise, right, instead of out there talking to the people. And it's polluting our representative democracy. And it's funding the incredible gerrymandering that is reducing our representative democracy and just tearing at the very fabric of who we are.
So let me ask you some just quick rapid fire questions in regards to the representative democracy and some of the bills that exist now, and some that don't, but people are talking about. Would you be in favor of banning congressional stock trades?
Absolutely. What Ann Wagner made $3.6 million in May. She's worth $27 million. She's only been in Congress for 12 years. How did that happen?
Insider trading. We all know how that happened.
Yes.
So corporate contributions. A, will you take any for your campaign? And B, if forced to a vote, would you ban it across the board?
I think we need to get it out of it. I think that federal elections need to be federally funded. And until we get big corporations out of our politics, it's going to continue to be polluted.
If Pear Corporation comes knocking and says, we'd like to donate $20,000 to your campaign, would you take it?
I wouldn't want any strings attached, and I'd be concerned, what strings would you want attached? Because, for me, I've already had my career. Mm-hmm. This is not a career for me. I'm in this to save democracy. This is my duty. So I don't need to be influenced by anybody. And I would hope that I would do such a good job as the representative and continue with my outreach and in the community that I would be able to not have to fundraise to the ridiculous amounts that we're being told we need to fundraise to. And I'm never going to out-fundraise Ann Wagner, right? But right. I can out-connect.
Would you vote for term limits?
Yeah, I think we need term limits. This shouldn't be a career. It was never intended for the House of Representatives to be a career. As I said earlier, you represent for a couple years, you go back to your business, and you're engaged and committed to the community because you're not having this separate career in Washington.
Would you vote to expand the Supreme Court to match the 13 federal districts?
I think we need to. And maybe then after we expand it, we can reconsider what that might look like. But I think right now they're not even holding themselves up to the ethics of the Supreme Court. And because of Mitch McConnell and what he did, he ruined the integrity of and the process of the Supreme Court. And because of that, now we've got to fix it.
Would you vote to eliminate the filibuster?
I think the filibuster I need to really consider a lot more because it does keep things from getting too toxic and getting pushed one way or the other. So, it's a cudgel that can be used for good and for bad. So I think that I would need to really probably have a good conversation and see how that actually impacts people in D.C.
What about a vote to ban executive orders?
I don't know that you should ban executive orders, but I definitely think that they're being overused and not for good.
Well, I think executive orders is one of those things where there's either none or it's allowed because if we assume guardrails, well, then we're just rolling it right into the courts and it's going to be a partisan decision. Would you agree?
Well, I think with some of the judge appointments that are happening, I think it could be partisan in the courts. I do agree. And that's a little bit scary, to be honest with you.
Funding of Ukraine. I'm going to bounce around here. This is our rapid fire section, by the way, in case you haven't picked up on that.
Well, I think as the I mean, our country is the preeminent, or was, democracy in the world. And if this democracy falls, I have people say to me, well, we're just going to leave the country and move somewhere else. Well, understand that if this democracy fails, all of them fail. Mm-hmm. And we do need to help Ukraine. We absolutely do.
Yeah, that's called the front line.
Right.
Versus Russia.
Right.
Yeah, it's so crazy to me. I can't even really ask these other questions because it's so ridiculous, whether it's Greenland or NATO or, like when you think of foreign policy, though, like just give me your 101 on where you view us today. Because obviously, as an American history teacher, you probably brushed up on what post-World War II really meant from a global order.
What is happening to our rules of world order right now that it's kept us out of World War III. And has it been perfect? No. But NATO is really important, and our obligations to our partners are really important, and that we are failing the people that we have the treaties with and our closest allies. I think Mark Carney said it best in a speech in Canada. The Canadian Prime Minister, gave at Davos. Mm-hmm. We are losing our integrity as a democracy. We are failing the world by letting democracy fall.
So give me your, let's see here. I drew blank on the name real quick. Give me your Andrew Shepard and I am the president closing speech. Remember that from American President, the movie?
No,
I don't. You should watch it. It's brilliant.
All right.
But we're at that time. Give me your closing pitch. Dumb it all down for a potential constituent listening.
Okay.
As far as what you would do, what it would mean, and what's next.
The reason I'm running for Congress and not a state-level office is because I want to return our checks and balances to our government as well as our representative democracy. This is a watershed moment. It is a tipping point. And I need to step into the void and step up. 30,000 colonists lost their lives founding this country. The least that we can all do is make sure that we keep the integrity of those founding documents intact. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to step into it. And I am going to connect with as many people as I can in District 2 who want to help me save democracy.
Do you prefer website, socials, phone? How do you like to talk to your people?
Oh, I like them to show up for my workshops, my policy talks. So I think the best thing to do is to go to the website and go to events and sign up.
And the website is?
Well, it's vondrasforcongress.us, but stick with votejoan.com. It's easier to find that way.
VoteJoan, JOAN.com. Joan, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, JB. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, really looking forward to...
And I love conversations.
Look forward to following the campaign. Again, as a Webster Mo2 resident, keep me posted on what's going on. Love to spread the word. And we'll go from there. So good luck with your campaign. I'm sure we'll be in touch. And for those of you listening that made it this far, thank you. Like, review, follow, share. It's all free. It improves my self-esteem when I see those clicks. So do brother a favor here. Just click like, send it to a friend. Until next time, tell me you're joking. Joan VonDras, thank you.
Thank you, JB. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.